This is the story and experiences of a trailblazing trans woman, recognised as the first trans woman to legally change her name in Fiji. When Katherine Wolfgramme first visited Sydney in the 1990s, she encountered something she hadn't seen before: visible trans representation, Oxford Street's nightlife, and the warmth of the rainbow community.
I was living in Melbourne, and in Melbourne, we learned to just shrink. That's the only word I can. So we shrunk, so that we were not noticed, so that we could not be ostracized, and so we tended to, just shrink and be more invisible. And then I came to Sydney. It was incredible. I saw trans women on Oxford Street, eating in cafes with the group and talking normally and openly and proudly with people. And I was just really dazzled by that freedom, thinking how lucky these trans women were here in Sydney compared to Melbourne. And I also had never seen so many gay people in one place. When I went to the dance party, I didn't even know there were that many gay people in Australia.
As a Fijian Anglo-Saxon trans woman, Katherine has moved through spaces where belonging has not always been guaranteed.
My family are Anglo Pacific Islanders, so part European, part Fijian, and that goes back to the 1820s, and that's generations and generations of part European families intermarrying, which makes us in Fiji not quite Fijian to Fijian, and certainly not Europeans to Europeans. So that's an intersection that I was born with. And then my family, I was raised in a very strict Seventh-day Adventist household. I went to a Seventh-day Adventist school, went to a Seventh-day Adventist church. My great-grandfather, who raised me, he was formerly a church pastor, and Nana and Grandpa together were missionaries in the early 20th century in Fiji. They built schools and churches across the Pacific. So even that is an intersection with the modern world. It actually made it easier for me to cope transitioning, because I was always taught that the outside world was an evil place full of heathens. So what I saw and what I witnessed, I just presumed that was just normal, even though it wasn't. Like, looking at it now, I think, oh my God, that was harsh. But back then, it was what I was expecting of the outside world. Outside of the church, I expected it to be like Sodom and Gomorrah, a very sinful and violent place. So I wasn't as shocked as I should have been, I suppose. And then, now as a trans woman, that is very exceptional. I pass easily in society as a woman. I could live as a woman if I wanted to, and create a whole past and no one would know. But that would not satisfy who I am. I sort of see myself, my transsexuality, as I was born male, but my brain believes itself to be female. It's quite simply just like that. And the only thing that I could do to be at peace with myself was to transition. And then my brain was no longer in turmoil. It was no longer stressed. And that, so there is that intersectionality there of just being transgender. Not all trans people think the way I think, but that's their truth and that's their story. But we're speaking about my truth and my story, and that's how I see my transsexuality. So I was born male, and I accept that. But my brain just wouldn't accept being male. So to please my brain, I transitioned, and so when my brain looks in the mirror, it is satisfied and happy. And I live as a woman. I have a very feminine presence, and my soul is that, like a woman, and I believe my spirit is a woman's spirit.
For many in the rainbow community, safe spaces are essential places where identity can be expressed freely, supported by others and without fear of discrimination or harm.
I think we can all, in a crowded room still feel lonely, and feel alone and not feel safe. Safety should also be a space where you feel free to express yourself. Free to express your interests, to talk about your feelings, safety is very broad. And you should always feel physically safe too, of course. And that takes protection. So it's so important it's so important to have a safe space to come to if you need it, and it's so important to protect the safe space. Sadly, the bearded pit in Redfern, it was a safe space. But when I have gone there, I've always felt immensely welcomed. And, there were lots of young people there, and that was their hangout, and that was their home away from home. And I think it's going to be hard for them to find that safe space again, so close to home. Hopefully, someone else will open up something in Redfern that might be more successful. But these things, they cost money, and it also it needs money. So if you don't use it, it will have to go. And that's what happened to Oxford Street after equal rights. People didn't need to go there anymore. Of course, if someone like Trump gets into Australia, then there will be a need for safe spaces again. And Oxford Street will thrive again, and so will Newtown. Life is, one thing life has taught me is, there is evolution, and nothing is set in stone. Look at Trump now. He will attempt to, he's taken away trans rights. He will attempt to break down gay marriages. And so it's not as set in stone as we think. And so I think it is always important to to be more on your guard and consider, protecting what we have, protecting what we have fought for, in the hope that it won't slide back. Yeah, well, I can't have children, so my eternity is my legacy, and I found that the trans women that came before me, they did the best they could. They paved the way probably better than we did, because they paved the footpath that we walk along, and we have broadened what they have established. And I hope that I'm carrying on that legacy, that I have turned that footpath, helped to turn that footpath into a street, and that the generations after me will turn that street into a boulevard. And that's how it works. But I'm very proud of my legacy. I'm thankful that I have contributed to not just the trans community, but to the rainbow community. I hope that I have instilled, confidence and a lot of people over the years have thanked me for, they said, "Oh, you were the only first person that was ever kind to me in Sydney. You're the first person that actually saw who I was." And even though that feels really nice, the other part of me thinks, why am I the only one? So I would like that to change. I would like everyone to be kind to each other.
Like many people within the LGBTQIA+ community, Katherine has faced discrimination, marginalisation and violence.
I carry a lot of trauma from the violence that I experienced as a young transgender woman and as a young child with gender dysphoria. I experienced physical violence, emotional violence, every type of violence you can experience. I have experienced it, and I carry that trauma with me. I would say that it's affected me in different ways. I prefer to be single, and I am asexual, and I think that is the direct effect of the discrimination that I faced as a transgender woman in the 1990s. But I survived and I have flourished under equal rights. I look around and I've reached a time of contentment. I never dreamed that I would reach this time in my life. I thought that it was always going to be very difficult. That's all I knew when I left home, because surviving as a trans woman was hard. To be able to sit back and repeat what I'm saying to you even is, it's beautiful. And I feel very happy and very content.
Although Katherine made history as the first trans woman to legally change her name in Fiji, she doesn't describe herself as an advocate. Instead, she sees herself as a human, demanding for dignity and equal rights.
You can look at it now and call it advocacy, but it was just, I didn't see it as advocacy, as a human right, and I have never hidden the fact that I'm a transgender woman. I've always been very open about it with people. I bring it into conversations when I first meet them, and that's why I have so many friends, because, people have always found me to be disarmingly straightforward, which is transparent in a way. And people see that as advocacy and trailblazing, because I was I was so open about it. Even though I didn't need to be, I passed very easily as a woman from day to day. So people often questioned why I did that. And for me, it was, I didn't want to lie to people. I thought, well, I've got nothing to be ashamed of. And but even that was considered trailblazing when I was younger. And people used to try and test my transsexuality, not realizing that it was my strength. And they were quite surprised when I would respond very proudly rather than running away ashamed. So is that activism, is that advocacy, or is that me demanding to be treated with dignity? So, you can look at it as trailblazing. I'm unsure. And I suppose maybe I am. Maybe it's because I put my foot down. If it wasn't me, it would have eventually been someone else, to look at it laterally. And I think that's why I have been celebrated so much. Like, I created a trans awareness workshop. I was the first self-employed transgender woman to deliver this to corporations. And Fortune 500 companies, and people thought that was amazing, and they gave me awards for that. But in actual fact, there are much more academic people now that can deliver a far better presentation than I. It's just that I was the first, and we live in this era of first. We're the first trans era, and I mean like the last 50, 60 years. Our era is the first in history to be able to scientifically transform our bodies to how we feel inside. That trans people have been around for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. As long as men and women have been here, so have trans people. But we live in this amazing era of birth. Even I'm quite dazzled by the protests, the anti-trans protests. I'm like, we were ignored for so long, and now people are protesting that we exist. So it is an acknowledgement of our existence. That's amazing if you look at it like that. Because people just pretended we didn't exist. And now our existence is undeniable through their protests. It's amazing. So me changing my name, being the first trans woman to change my name, that was amazing. Looking at my passport with my female name on my passport and on my birth certificate, it was amazing, and it's amazing to just have equal rights. It's amazing to be employable. It's amazing to be able to get married. This is a new era for us.
Katherine's story shows us that progress is built through challenging systems, creating opportunities for change, and making space for future generations to thrive.